A 23-year-old cyberbully who was arrested in November for using a fake Facebook profile to torment his neighbors for months on end. His intention was to extort money from the family next door in the Durban suburb. The cyberbully used a fake name and sent threatening SMSs, Facebook and WhatsApp messages to pressurize his victim. He pleaded guilty to a charge of attempted extortion when the matter was finalized at the Durban Regional Court. Legal experts hailed the court outcome as a precedent setting. To discuss this matter further, we're joined by digital law and rights advisor Amanda Manyame. Amanda, very good morning to you. Thank you so much for your time. Let's talk a little bit about the legalities of cyberbullying and harassment in South Africa, and of course, what makes this a landmark judgment.
Good morning, Paul. Thank you so much for having me. This is a landmark judgment, firstly, because we've had a Protection from Harassment Act that applies to online cyberbullying or harassment in general, but we haven't seen it play out in courts. So having an act is one thing, but having people being able to apply that act is definitely another thing. That is why this is definitely a landmark judgment. And we are seeing how heavy these penalties are, because in terms of the act, it says you can get a fine or you can go to prison for not up to 5 years. Here he had a sentence of 2 years that was suspended, and he was fined 60,000 rand, which is a lot of money.
So this is a 23-year-old who really harassed his neighbor with threatening SMSs and WhatsApp messages and all sorts of incidents to pressurize his victim. When it comes to understanding what to do in a case like that, when, let's say somebody is, as we speak, experiencing the same sort of harassment, what are the steps that need to be taken?
So firstly, if you are a child, if you're under the age of 18, you need to tell a teacher, you need to tell an adult. And if you are an adult or you've been told by a child, you would go to a magistrate's court. Any magistrate's court that is near you, you go to the clerks of the court and you tell them you want to get a protection order in terms of the Protection from Harassment Act. So they will then assist you with the different steps that you have to follow. But naturally, because it is an online act, sometimes you don't know who's harassing you. What will then happen is either the courts will direct you to go to a police station that will then ask your internet service provider, your Vodacoms, your MTNs, to then find out who's been sending you the messages. Or the court will directly go to Vodacom and MTN and request that they then find out who's been sending these messages. And then you can file that protection order against this person. So once you've then served this person with a protection order, if this person sends you that message again, or they violate that message in some or other way, then they can then be taken to court and they can then be either fined or sentenced to a prison term of not more than 5 years. There are naturally hurdles along the way. Suppose they change their name, they change a computer or any, sort of thing. But that's generally the process that you would follow.
And when it comes to this whole scene playing out in court, what sort of evidence would need to be presented here?
So evidence will remain evidence with any other court case. But what will happen here, because you've gone to Vodacom, you've gone to MTN, they've given you who is particularly doing this to you, you then present that from the Vodacoms, from MTN, and you say, this is what the ISPs have told me, this is who this message is coming from, and I served a protection order against this person, here's the protection order, and this person has done it again. So you just now have that proof. So the reason why we had this act is because proof in online matters is very difficult to get. And the person who accuses someone of doing something in court has to prove. So the evidence now comes from the internet service providers, your MTN, your MWeb.
And when it comes to international best practice, how do we fare as a country in handling these cases?
Our laws are definitely trying to keep up because we've got this act, the Protection from Harassment Act, We also have the cyber crimes bill that will hopefully soon be an act. It just has to be signed into law by the president. So we definitely have made strides towards getting laws that can assist. However, we could have an independent authority such as Australia's e-safety commissioner who sits and does this for a job every day. We could have certain bodies within our law enforcement that sits every single day and can assist with this and can pick up these particular issues without someone having to report it. We could have in our laws take down notice procedures. That is where you go to, let's say, Facebook, and you request them to take down something, and in terms of the law, they're required to do so. So we could still do certain things, but we also have to bear in mind that our laws are trying to keep up, as well as the fact that technology evolves each and every single day. But we are definitely somewhere in the middle when it comes to comparing with other countries internationally.
When it comes to people harassing others on social media, in the social space, especially looking at the impact of COVID-19 and many people now moving towards online and social media, what are some of the trends that have come along during this period when it comes to perhaps the number of cyberbullying incidents and of course, those crimes?
Well, the numbers have definitely shot up. I don't necessarily have South African numbers for you, but I can tell you definitely in the UK, the numbers have shot up. In the EU, there was a regulation that was passed in December, and that stopped tech companies such as Facebook from being able to, on their own, voluntarily pick up some of the cyberbullying crimes and some of the child sexual exploitation that happens online. So because they can't pick it up in the EU, these have definitely increased. So we've seen that there's been a marked increase. It has definitely shot up. And as you can see, this was now also as a result of our laws changing and our laws not necessarily protecting children online. But because everyone is online, people don't necessarily talk about online safety. People don't talk about how to keep yourself safe online. We are seeing these numbers shoot up, and because of Corona, these numbers have definitely gone up quite a little bit.
When it comes to, I mean, you mentioned a little earlier on, you spoke about children and you mentioned the impact of such a landmark judgment and how it would specifically affect children. When it comes to parents and the leeway on allowing their children to access social media platforms, what would some advice be from you as you look at the dynamics and how things are playing out when it comes to cyberbullying and the impact of social media on people's lives?
Firstly, as a parent, you need to know what your child is doing online. So if they're playing online games, you need to be aware of which game is it, what happens in the game. You need to turn off certain things such as them not interacting with other people. You can do that on the online games. When it comes to your child being on online learning platforms, either as a result of school, you also need to constantly be able to monitor them, because these crimes, they just happen. So in as much as you can be vigilant, they will always still happen. We need to teach children that do not talk to strangers. So stranger danger still applies online. Don't speak to someone you do not know. Don't speak to someone who's not in your classroom. Do not accept friend requests from people that you don't know, even if they say that they know you. Another thing is social media platforms do not allow children that are under the age of 13 to gain access to their platforms. So if your child is under the age of 13, you as a parent are the one who needs to open that account for them, and you're the one who monitors that account for them. So tech companies have put that responsibility on parents. So as parents, we need to make sure our children are not on these platforms, and if they are, we need to be very vigilant and know what happens on these platforms. Who are they talking to? We need to moderate, because the law does not require tech companies to moderate. So Facebook is not actively moderating for you as a parent. You as the parent need to moderate. So we need to know more than our kids know, but sadly our kids know a lot more than we do about the online space.
Very true. In this case, a criminal conviction was indeed successful, but not so many other cases result in this great outcome. As an expert in the digital space, what are some of your concerns when it comes to the processes that lead to a conviction, or perhaps access to information that would lead to such a conviction?
It is very difficult for victims. That is the honest truth. Although our laws, particularly in South Africa, the laws are trying to make it a lot easier for victims to be able to get access to evidence, but it is a very long journey. It tends to be a very expensive journey. The Protection from Harassment Act states that you don't need a lawyer. This is something you can do by yourself. But, we don't necessarily understand what the law says. So you will end up having to, gain access to a lawyer, which is very costly. And another thing is, as people that are using these online platforms, we don't necessarily understand what it is that we can do. So if I am being harassed, the norm is normally to just block that person. We don't even report that person to the tech platforms. So another thing you can do is report whoever it is who's bullying you, whether it's on Twitter, it's on Instagram, report that particular account. But overall, it is something I believe as society, we are the ones that need to work towards correcting this, because we sometimes share things we're not supposed to share. We sometimes put information that we're not supposed to put up about ourselves. So we share this particular information. It would be a lot helpful if we are more vigilant, because not everyone is online for the purest of intentions. So we need to always constantly be on the lookout. The online space is not a dangerous space. We shouldn't be afraid of it. But at the same time, we should definitely make sure that we are vigilant, we are aware of what we're doing, we know who we're speaking to, and we know that there are these things that we can do to be able to bring these people to justice, no matter how long this justice takes.
And very lastly, before we let you go, what type of information should we not be sharing on social media?
First day of school, when your child goes to school, do not share a picture with the school badge on their uniform. Do not share your location. Do not share. I would advise against not sharing pictures of your children online. Do not share your location. Don't share your address. Do not share anything that you wouldn't want other people to not know. So if it's information you are not going to be telling people in the real world, do not put it online. And yeah, don't block out certain things. For example, with the matriculant results coming out, don't block out things such as your matric exam number. People can always remove that. That's quite easy to remove. So whatever it is you're sharing, just make sure it's information you would want people to know. If you wouldn't want people to gain access to it, do not even put it up online. The internet does not forget.
Very well. Thank you so much for that sound advice. Digital law and rights advisor Amanda Manyame giving us some insight when it comes to the digital space following a landmark judgment that resulted in a 23-year-old being convicted.